In this video, we're going to go over the pen tool, and we're going to create some basic vectors using the pen tool. If you're not familiar with the pen tool, by the end of this video, I think you'll have a pretty good handle, pardon the pun, on how to work with the pen tool and create some basic shapes. The pen tool really unlocks much of everything in vectors, in the creation of logos, in the creation of typefaces, really anything that has to do with mathematical curvature, mathematical calculations. We won't get into all of the weeds and the finer details of the science behind things, but I'll go ahead and introduce you as best I can so that I can get you up and running. So, the pen tool, if we look over here in Adobe Illustrator, I'm using version 2023. It is a bit older. We're sitting here in the first part of 2025, but I like some of the features of 2023. It's kept it pretty bare bones. We're not bogged down with some of the AI features. But over here in the left is the Tools panel. And if you hover over the tools, you'll see a little kind of a tool tip that pops up and tells you what the keyboard command would be. If you click on Pen Tool here, it looks like a little nib that you might use with a fountain pen. That's how you know what the pen tool is. So it's right there. I also want to let you know that I've created some presets here. I've set my stroke color down here on the Tools panel to blue. And I've also set my stroke width, you can see that up here, to 2 points. That's a unit of measure here. That's pretty standard. And then my stroke, kind of the characteristics of the stroke here, my cap is set to a round cap. My corner is set to a round corner or round join. And we are just going to kind of keep it that way. I do that because I want you to be able to see what we are drawing here. I've created this template here. You can see some basic shapes, and they do get more complex. We even get into some superhero logos down here at the bottom. But they do get a little more complex, and we'll go along and I'll walk you through how to create each one of these. And I'll introduce you to some kind of neat features, tips, and tricks along the way. I also want to bring your attention to this fact that I have set up this workspace. This is a workspace that we're using that is pretty standard. Adobe provides default workspaces. You can come up to Window and go down to Workspace, and if you're following along, you can set yours to Essentials Classic, and that will give you what you see here. Now it just kind of moves some things around for us, and it will give you all of your panels down the right hand side here. Now we can't see what these are. If you hover over them, you'll get another tool tip letting you know what these symbols mean. But if we also just kind of hover over just a little bit to the left of these icons, you can see a double-headed arrow. And if you hold down your left mouse button, or whatever the equivalent is, whether you're using a stylus or tablet or something like that, you can drag this out and you can see the names. So we'll go ahead and drag it out. That's a little more comfortable, especially if you're new to this. You can really identify what these are now. All right, let's get started. I've set up layers in the layers panel. Let's just kind of look at that real quickly. Here's a template below. Don't have to worry about that. I've locked that down. And that's just so I can draw over top of it. It's kind of a guide. You can do that with your drawings too. If you drew a picture and you want to import it and put it on template layer, you can do that. Put it in the background. You can even dim it down, those kinds of things. I've just created some gray lines here. Above that is a working layer. You can see that here, and that is visible and unlocked so that we can work on it. All right, so with that out of the way, let's see. I love it, these panels sometimes. With that out of the way, we'll go ahead and get started drawing. We have our pen tool selected. We have our stroke color selected, the weight, all those things we talked about. Let's get moving here into this line. So I'm zooming in on this line, and I'm going to click just to let you know where we're starting. I'm starting over on the left. Now as I draw through this thing, I'm going to show you how I draw. I tend to work left to right and then clockwise direction. You'll see that what that means. It just kind of keeps me knowing where the points are and where the handles will go and all that. So let's start there. We're just going to set a simple point with the pen tool. That is a point. It's represented here by this dark square. You may have a different color when you create yours, and that has to do with our layer color. If we come over and look at the layer, we can see we have a dark blue here. If you double click next to the name, not on the name, you can set your layer color similarly to dark blue or whatever else you want. We'll just keep it at dark blue, but that's where that comes from. So we have set down this point right there. It's ready to go. And you might be wondering, what is this little thing that is appearing here as I move around, kind of like a radar? Well, that is just kind of a guide. It's a preview of what you will draw next. Maybe there's a curve you're working on, but it's letting us know. It's kind of just like a guide, like a little rubber band that's in there, just letting you know where things are going to be placed. The angle, we can kind of line things up. So we'll click at the end, and now we have created a line segment, also called a stroke. So remember over here in the Tools panel, you can see it says stroke. That's what lines are called. They're called strokes. So I can hit Escape on my keyboard, the Escape key, and now we have a line segment. So this one is selected. Let me bring this to your attention here. So if it is not selected, it's going to be an open, kind of a white color here. So it's white. If it is selected, it's going to be whatever the color is, the dark color here in dark blue, for example. So it's selected. I can also see that if I click off of things, I can come up to my direct selection tool or my selection tool. Direct selection tool allows you to select things more directly, and I can drag around this with either of those tools, and it will show me that 2 points are selected. Here's 1 point that's selected, and here's the other point over there that's selected, so independently here. Very simple there. Let's get back to our pen tool. I'll click off of this, an easy shortcut. If you are on the Mac, you can use the Command key. If you're on Windows, it's the Control key. And I'm going to be saying that I'm working on a Mac, so when I say Command, it means Control on Windows. When I say Option on the Mac, it means Alt on Windows. And then the Shift key is the same on both. Those are some main keys that we will be using, and we'll also be using the Spacebar at one point. I'll just show you a little trick with the Spacebar. So we can just click off of that. But I'll show you another way to do that after we create this square. Now this is a basic shape. You could just try to draw it out by doing the points, just like we'll do here very quickly, now that we've established how things work. You could just draw it out very quickly, but it's not exact. I just did that freehand, freeform. So let's just hit delete. I can come over here to the rectangle tool, down below my pen tool, select that. Even though it's a square, it's still called the rectangle tool. I'm going to click first, holding down my left mouse button. I'm using a mouse, and if I hold down the Shift key, that will constrain the proportions to a square. So everything is equal here. And we're going to be using that Shift key throughout to keep things horizontal, vertical, diagonal, or sized just like I showed you, proportionally the same. So we have our square drawn. We can see that pretty easily. Same with the circle. It is possible to create a circle the best that you can. It's not going to be perfect. It's not as perfect as using the Ellipse tool. So that's the next tool that we are looking at here in the Tools panel. And we will try to put our cursor roughly in the center. We'll just eyeball it. That looks pretty good. It's not going to be exact, but we're going to click and hold down with our left mouse button. And as we do, we'll introduce a new key. Yes, we'll hold down the Shift key, but we'll also hold down the Option key. Again, on the Mac, Option, Windows, it's going to be the Alt key. So Shift and Option held down and then dragging out will give us our circle. That was a pretty good guess. I guessed the center of that circle pretty well. So pat me on the back there. I know you can't do that right now, but anyway, we'll let go. There is a nice circle drawn. And I'm not going to show you how to draw a circle just yet until we get into talking about curves a little bit more. We may revisit this circle. Let's move over. I'm going to use my space bar. That'll give me this little grabber hand. Space bar allows me to kind of move through the window, to move things into frame here. The next tool that we have the Polygon tool. But before we do that, we can, again, go ahead and click and create, just eyeballing it, a triangle. Now, most people won't even be able to tell that it was drawn by hand. If you want to use a shape tool, you can go into the Polygon tool. It's a little, looks like a hexagon here, 6 sides, yes, hexagon. We will guess the middle of the triangle, kind of like what we did with the circle. We'll hold down the Option and Shift key. And we have a little bit of an issue here. We have our hexagon. That's default. So whatever the last shape you drew is, or was, it will be the one that will be drawn here. Default is the hexagon. So while I have this held down, Shift and Option, I'm still holding down my left mouse button, the Option, that Shift key, all together. I'm going to actually let go of those keys because I don't have a third hand here. I'm going to go ahead and hit the down arrow on my keyboard. So the down arrow will allow us to select polygons of different sides. So we have the pentagon, the square, and the triangle. And then if I hold down the Shift key again, it's going to bring it back into alignment here. I can move it up, and I'm just going to kind of overshoot it a little bit here. And I'll guess. And then we can grab our selection tool and move it over top. So there we go. We got a triangle drawn. That is an equilateral triangle. All sides are the same. All right, we're going to come over here to Pentagon and we'll do the same. So we'll just talk about these geometric shapes. Let's do that. What are we going to do now? We got a triangle. We need to go up 2 sides. Let's go up to a square with the up arrow, and then we'll go to a pentagon. I'll hold down my Shift key. It'll bring it into alignment, and we will just roughly guess it, and then I can come back up here to my selection tool, or here's a nice little tip. Hold down the Command key, Control on Windows. Hold down that Command key, and it will give you temporary access to that selection tool. So the Command key is going to become your friend. So there we have another equilateral pentagon. So you probably thought you escaped geometry somewhere in high school. But no, we use it every day in Illustrator. It's good to know. Now we have a little bit of an issue here. We're getting more complex. This is a shape that we are going to draw with the pen tool. And I'm going to click and I'm going to set my first point. And I've set this first point down at the bottom. I'm going to work clockwise, going around like a clock, and in this direction, left to right. So let's hold down the Shift key. We learned about that when we sized the different polygons. Shift will constrain things. This is going to, watch when I hit the Shift key. It's going to pull it into alignment vertically. So it's going to give us a perfect vertical. And I'm just going to keep it held down the whole time. My Shift key is currently held down as I move through this shape and click. And I'm doing that to keep everything horizontal or vertical as we go. So that is how we would do that. We could go through the whole thing here. I'll do this shape. I may not do every shape. I'll just show you some techniques, and then if you have access to the template, because I do provide access at least to my students, but if you have access to the template, or if you want it, you can leave a comment and I may be able to provide that for you. Let's see. Let me show you this real quick. We're going to close this shape up. Right now, it is just a series of line segments that are connected through the points and shifting different locations here, vertical, horizontal. When we get to the end, I'm still holding down the shift, and we come very close to this beginning point again, you will see the icon change. So this little cursor icon, the pen nib, it has an additional circle, and that just means we're going to close up this and make it a shape. And there we go. So we've closed that completely. And now we can hold down the command key and just click anywhere off of it. And you can see when I'm holding down the command key with the pen tool still activated in the tools panel, it becomes the direct selection tool that we also see up here in the tools panel. It becomes the direct selection tool temporarily. That's very important because it's going to give us quick access to being able to modify shapes, curves, the lines that we are creating, the strokes that we're creating here in Illustrator. So keep that in mind. The command key is going to be your friend. This one is where we will start talking about creating curves. Now, I don't want to bore you to tears with it. I don't want to have to do the whole shape here. I'm going to show you how we can create the first parts of it. We may do the whole shape, but I think we need to understand what curves are first. We've done lines, basic geometric shapes, the straightaways, no problem. That's pretty easy to do. But now we're going to get into creating curves. So this is how I have found the best way to draw a curve. Keep these things in mind as you're experimenting or playing around with your techniques. Let me just get this into view as best I can. We're going to start with our basic start point. And then we're going to hold down our shift key because we do want to make this straight line, but then we see it's going to go into a curve. It's going to reach the apex of the curve here, almost like the hill in a roller coaster. We're at the top of the hill, and this is where everyone says "we" and closes their eyes and panics and freaks out, and this is where the fun begins down here, and we go through the roller coaster again. So we get the fear, and naturally we have some fear drawing with the pen tool here, so that makes sense, and then the excitement builds, the panic, and fun. Okay, so let's go ahead and click right about here. We're going to do it ahead of the curve, and we're going to hold down our shift key, click, and we're going to drag up. So we're just going to drag it up. Now, what are these little things that are coming off of that point? Those are called handles. Those are going to affect the way the curve is formed. So don't worry too much about that yet. Just know that as we're dragging with the shift key, we drag these handles out from that point. When we get up to, I mentioned the top of the hill, that's a great place to put another point. And then we're going to drag, holding down the shift key again, we're going to drag in the direction, and we're going to move that way. Now we could get very detailed as we go. We may not hit the middle of this stroke. That's kind of what I'm aiming for. The underlying gray stroke. We may not hit it perfectly, but that's fine. We're just learning here. So let's put another point here, holding down the left mouse button. Important, do not let go of the left mouse button. Hold down the shift key and keep drawing. So we're drawing clockwise direction here. And if you look really closely behind this point, up to the top of the curve there, you can see it doesn't line up that well in the center of the gray. But it's fine for this exercise. So you can see that just through a series of these points, we have created a nice curve here. So we can actually, I mentioned that we could affect things as we're drawing. Let's back up real quick. Let's do Command Z on the keyboard, Control Z on Windows. That's going to undo everything that we just did, that last thing. And we are going to set up our point here. And I'm going to go ahead and click the point and drag. Now, as I'm holding down the shift key, I'm also going to hold down, let go of the shift key for a second, and hold down my space bar. And if I do that while I have the left mouse button held down, you can see that I can move that point around while I'm drawing it. I can also just hit the shift key and it'll return it there. But yeah, you can use the space bar to just kind of position it the best you can. And then once you got it in position, you can let go of the space bar and return to the shift key and just kind of pull things into position there. So just a helpful thing. While you have that point, while it's white and not selected as you see it is now, you can move it around with the space bar. All right, let's continue on. Let's put another point right about here. We're looking right kind of directly across from the start point here. This might be a good location roughly to put that. Let's click and hold down the shift key and continue on. We'll come down to the bottom of the curve. And we will go ahead and click there and do the same thing. So it's not looking perfect, but here's the thing. It's not about being perfect at this stage. Here's why, because you can always, at any point, let's just hit escape and let's hit command and click off of it. We have this curve. It doesn't look too bad, but you can always, at any point, go back and adjust the handles. And we can do that right now. Let me show you another little trick while we're working on this. If you select the line and you come into the transparency panel over here on the right, and you set the mode here from normal to multiply, you can actually see through the line that we're working on. Just remember to set it back if you want that to be a solid line. So it's giving us transparency while we work on this, so you can see the guideline below. So that can really help if you've done a really nice tight drawing, say for a logo, and you want to see that artwork below while you're working on it to get it pretty exact. That's a good thing to do. Transparency, multiply. All right, we'll leave it on for now, maybe reset it in a bit. I want to introduce you to handles. Let's look at the direct selection tool. We're going to drag over the top part, create a little box, maybe difficult to see here, but it's a little dotted line box, and that's going to select that point. We know it's selected because it is filled with the dark blue in this case. All the other ones are not selected. They are white. So this is the one we're working on. So I'm going to zoom in on this and I will talk about handles here with the pen tool. So when we were setting our points and then dragging with that left mouse button held down in the shift key, we were able to pull out handles from those points. And that let us create things that we can now use to affect the curve. So if I take this direct selection tool, and if I click on one of the handles, you see the direct selection tool arrow, it becomes black, and I hold down my shift key to keep it again constrained to the horizontal here. If I didn't do that, you can see it's like a seesaw. But if I hold down my shift key, I can start to move the curve and manipulate it. So now I want it to line up a little bit better. In this region, you can see this faint blue line, dark blue line. We want to try to line that up with the gray underlying so that this blue stroke is a little bit closer to the underlying guide layer. All right, let's do the same thing with this handle. Now we don't have to select the point. I just did that to activate the handles so we could see them. But now that we have all the handles visible, we could just come down to this one and hold down the shift key and then also move this in. And we can see it's not quite lined up. So now we can select this point. We'll hold down the shift key just to keep it, again, vertical. And it's kind of a delicate dance here with the mouse and the keyboard. But if you select it just right and then you hold down the shift key, you can move things into alignment. So let's get this as close as possible to the middle here, right around that point, right in this area here, and close as possible to the middle up here. That's what we're aiming for. We're just going to start dragging our handles. This one's going to come up a little bit, and we're going to just work on these handles until we get that in alignment, and it's getting pretty close. It may not be perfect. It may not. You may have to move the points around again. So maybe we move this one up, and maybe we move this handle over a little bit, and we're getting real close. I would say that's pretty good. You can see just by looking at it, because we have transparency turned on with multiply, you can see just by looking at it that we have a much better result. It's fairly even on either side of the line. Just so you know, I have a 2.5, or actually a 2 stroke here, 2 points on my stroke. And if I click this hamburger menu, you can show options there. So just a little bit more information. We can see we have our round cap and our round join, the things that we looked at early on. So a 2-point stroke, but our underlying gray drawing is a 1-point stroke. I just did that just so that we can see how to line things up. So these are things that you probably aren't going to learn in another video on YouTube. These are things that I've learned on my own. You won't see someone show you this technique to get things more exact. I guarantee it. So we can see over here we got things that are a little bit off. We could adjust those, but we don't really need to do that at this stage. I just wanted to show you that handles can be selected much like points, and they can be tweaked here just a little bit. And because I like to just continue working on things, I can get a little out of hand here. So we will move on. So just remember, for creating the curves, at least in this case, the shift key constrains things horizontal, vertical. We set our points, we drag those handles out as we go, and then we're good to go. While we are still on the curve, we'll spend a little bit more time on it. Let me show you another thing that we could do. Just say we don't like what we've done here, or I will show you another method for drawing this curve. So let's just delete everything. I just hit the delete key twice after it was selected. So now I'm going to do the same thing. It's going to look like we're doing this over again, but let me show you another technique that some people like. So we are going to just click as if this is a polygon. So hold down the shift key. I'm going to put my point right about there. I'm going to create a little roof here, and we'll put it over here. And then we'll go down here, and we'll go down here. We're doing the opposite of what we did on the other side, trying to find the kind of the outermost part of that curve. That's the very bottom of the hill on our roller coaster. So that's not too bad looking if we wanted that shape, but we don't want that. We want to have curves. So let me show you a really cool trick that we can do here. It really only involves one handle that we have to manipulate. So let's get our pen tool. We have the object selected. We have all points selected in this case. Don't have to, but they are selected. A new key to learn, the Option key, also the Alt key on Windows, but the Option key. If we click on top, we get this little tool here. So we saw the white arrow, that was the direct selection tool. This little tool that we see here, it's not an enclosed arrow, but it is, if you look under the pen tool, it's the anchor point tool, the anchor point tool. And you can see that because we have the same symbol here next to that. So I'm going to click off. Let's just click on that point. I held down the Command key there to activate the direct selection tool so I could click on these points. So remember, we're learning these tools, Command and Option now. Option converts to this tool right here, the anchor point tool. All right, let's hover over top and then hold down our shift key after we start clicking with the left mouse button and dragging. So we don't have the shift key yet. We get the seesaw action. Now let's hold down the shift key and it constrains it. And you can see that we've just drawn the curve with one point and the two handles. So you don't need multiple handles everywhere. I showed you that. There's also another way to do it. We won't get into that right now, but you could draw it without even having a handle on this. You could draw it with this and this, dragging out the handles to create the curve. But we just have one set of handles here. Let's do this at the bottom. Option key, click with the left mouse button, start dragging. You can see I'm going backwards here. That's going to create a shape that looks like that. But we want to hold down the shift key and go the other direction. Remember, we're drawing left to right. Shift key and just about like that. Now you can see we've gone beyond the original point. If we were to draw a straight vertical line from that point on the top left before the curve, you can see our handle extends beyond that. So we don't want that. We want it to either come in alignment or we want it to be just close to that. So we can see actually that we need to move this point. So how do we do that? Command key held down, and now we can select that point and move it. And then we can adjust our handles again. So we'll pull this one out. I'm holding down Command and Shift in this case, the direct selection. It's letting me select the handle independent of the other one. So I can drag this out to wherever I need it. So keep that in mind. The Command key kind of allows you to very quickly just select one side of the handles. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So we're not going to draw the whole thing. We're going to get into this complex, crazy shape. And now that we're learning some of these keyboard commands, I will show you how to do this. So let's see really quickly. And then we're going to put some things into practice. I'm going to do the Batman and the Superman one. And then I probably won't do the Wonder Woman one just in the interest of time. But that may be one of those things that you want to tackle. It's a lot more challenging. But let's show you how we can work with more difficult changes in direction here and curvature. And I'm going to show you a tip here as well. So after we draw it traditionally, I'm going to show you a cool feature in Adobe Illustrator. So hang in there. Let's go ahead and click our point. And what we will do is we will come up to this point and we will click and drag a handle out. So I'm holding down my left mouse button again, just so I can drag the handle. Now I've reached this point and it looks pretty good. It's following that path or that stroke over on the left, the gray. We haven't let go yet, so we can't see it in blue, but not a problem. So let's go ahead and hold down the Option key. Alt on Windows, Option on the Mac. When we do that, and we start dragging the handle that we currently are over top of, it will allow us to shift direction completely. And this is how we're going to establish the next part of the curve. Now, I don't get too worried about it yet. I don't know where this is going to go. A lot of people try to go on the line. You don't need to do that. In fact, I go a little bit beyond and then just let go, because I can tweak those handles later. And I'm going to put down my next point down here. And before I let go, I'm going to drag in the direction just like I did. I'm going to go ahead and pull this up just like I did when we started. And we can see I didn't even have to move that other handle, the trailing handle, the one from the last point. I'm just doing the same thing we did when we started. I still have my left mouse button held down, by the way. Now I'm going to hold down the Option key and do exactly what we did with the last one. And we'll just repeat the process. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. We'll tweak it. We'll fix it in a little bit. I've drawn out the handle. I'm not holding down Option, just the left mouse button at this point. Then I will hold down the Option key. Got my thumb on that. And I'm going to extend a little bit beyond to the outside. Doesn't really matter. We're just setting the handles. Click. Drag. Option key. And we'll just set this one up here. And I didn't do anything. I didn't hold down the Option key. I didn't drag out on this one, because I can come to the end one right here and I can drag with this. I can just leave it like that, actually. All right. So I've drawn everything out and we got it to a point that actually looks pretty good to start, but we have to refine things now. So this is how you go back and refine things. I tend to just drag or select the direct selection tool and then drag around what I've drawn. That way I can see all the handles and work on it. It's going to change in a second anyway, but I just want to see everything. So then I will take my direct selection tool and I will start manipulating the handles that are already in place. Remember, we don't have one up here. We do have one here, but I can go ahead and tweak this one, pull that into place. And there we have fixed our curves. This one needs a little bit of an adjustment, so we'll just select. We can also select the curve, by the way. You can just click on the curve or click on the segment, and you can go ahead and do that. So you don't have to select the points all the time. You can just select anywhere on it and it will bring it up completely. Then if you want to select a point, you can do that. There. So let's just say you messed up along the way. That happens for me. Not all the time, but it does happen, of course. We all have a little bit of errors here in our work. So let's have the pen tool selected. Let's just say that you wanted to add a handle to this up here. This point did not have a handle. You can see that. This one down here does. This one does. This one doesn't. I am going to, with the pen tool selected, I'm going to hit my Option key. Hold that down, and I'm going to drag out, just like this. Just dragging out with the Option key held down. You can see that that introduces a new set of handles here, left and right, for that point. So again, the Option key, and then you drag out with the left mouse button, kind of like what we did when we drew the roller coaster hill in the last example. So now that we've had those drawn, or they're dragged out, they're equal on both sides, we can hold down our Option key. That gives us the anchor point tool, and we can actually drag it back into position. And now we have handles. So we lost the one on the other side. We just hit the Command key, reselect the point, Option key, grab the handle, pull it back into position, and now we can come back and adjust the handle on the other side. So it will affect handles in both cases, but now we have this. So we've thrown out a lot of handles here, tons of handles. But that's how you are going to get better with things. So just remember, your Option and your Command key are going to come in handy when you're trying to draw and shift direction with the handles. All right, now that we've learned all of these techniques, I'm going to go ahead and create the Batman very quickly. I'm just going to walk you through it, and I'm going to talk here. I won't tell you everything. I won't get into too much of the details here, but let's just work on it together. You can watch me work. I'll try to explain what I'm doing here. We're going to set a first point down here. I'm going to start at the bottom. It seems like a good place because this is a symmetrical design. I'm going to click right over here, and I'm going to click here, and I'm going to click up here. And you're probably wondering, what in the heck are you doing? This doesn't look anything like what you just taught me. This is going to be really difficult. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to hit the Escape key. That's going to deselect everything. And here's where I'm going to show you something that is awesome in Illustrator. Remember, I told you to hang out for this one. This is the coolest thing that I can think of when drawing with the pen tool. So we have these shapes drawn. You saw that I actually just put points on the points of the bat wing here. So there's a point to start, a point on the corner, really wherever the corners are. Okay, so we got those established. Illustrator allows you another tool where you can create the curves and the handles just by dragging the segments. So if we hover over top of any of the line segments and we hold down our Option or Alt key, we get this shifting. We have to be right over top of it, but we get this shifting of the cursor. And it looks like two dots connected by a curved line with the black arrow. So hold down your Option key and start dragging that line segment, and you will get handles that are automatically drawn for you. So we're going to go ahead and do this quick. I'm coming down here, I'm holding down my Option key, and I'm just dragging it out. We're not worried about it being perfect. We're just trying to get it in place. That actually looks pretty good. Let's come up here, holding down the Option key. Still, I haven't let go at all. You can let go as long as you pick it up again. And we actually have a little bit of a curvature right here. Okay. So we have everything drawn here. It doesn't look that great though. It's not perfect again. Let's turn on the transparency of that line again so we can see what's below. And you can kind of see just looking at it how wonky it is. Let's select everything again. I held down my Command key, gave me the direct selection tool so I could select everything. Hold down Command and start bending the handles or modifying the handles to modify the shape. So I just have my Command key held down and I'm selecting these points of the handles. So I'm saying a lot of overlapping terms here. More correctly, it would just be the handles. So I'm just going ahead and selecting these open white circles. So you're probably familiar with it now. If you're following along, if you're doing some of the exercises or doing your own, you're probably learning very quickly now. And a lot of what I'm telling you about which keys to hold down, they're probably sticking in your brain. So you can see. I'm not 100% happy with it because you know my OCD kicks in. I need everything to be perfect here. It gives me anxiety if it's not quite lined up. Okay, so we got that one side of the bat wing. I'm going to go ahead and make my transparency normal again. And we'll just take a look at it. So that looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. I'm going to show you another little thing here in Illustrator. It can be kind of annoying if you leave it on all the time, but let's go ahead and pick up the end of this point. You see the little kind of forward slash there? That means we're going to continue drawing here. So we're just picking it up to create some more line work here. Before we draw the next point, I'm going to hit Command and U on my keyboard. Command U, that would be Control U. Command U gives us what's called Smart Guides. Those can also be found in the View menu. If you come down, you can see it's checked. Smart Guides, Command U. And when we come back in here, we can see we get these little kind of tips that pop up, and it will snap to these lines, and it will tell us that we're intersecting with the start point below. And you can see this vertical dark blue line drawn down to the bottom point. That is not a visible line, it's just a guide that's temporary, but it's letting you know that this point that we're about to set is in the exact same vertical position or alignment rather, as the one below. So now we can click, and then if we hold down our Shift key, or if we just go ahead and close it just by clicking on the next point, we now know that this is a perfectly vertical line because our Smart Guides told us that. Let's leave Smart Guides on for this next part. We are going to look at how we can flip this over to the other side so that we have a mirror image of this left side and we create the full bat. So to do that, I'm going to introduce you to the next tool in the tool panel. If you look down here, you'll see Rotate tool. You may already have it set to the Reflect tool, but that's the one we want. So we're going to click on that, hold down our mouse, and it'll give us this sub-menu, the Reflect tool. So that's what it looks like. Two arrows facing one another. We're going to come back over to the design here, and you can see my Smart Guides are still on, and we're going to pick this anchor point, this point at the top. It says anchor. And we're going to, when we click on it, before we click on it, we're going to hold down our Option key, and then we're going to click our left mouse button. Now what did that do down there? I've never seen that happen before. Let's undo that. I think it's because we had that selected. That point is selected, so it doesn't know what to do here. Let's deselect everything and then reselect it, and now we have the whole thing selected. So it was probably saying you want to reflect just that point down below. All right, back to what we were doing. There's the anchor. Let's click on it right after we're holding down the Option key. When we do that, we'll get this dialog box, some menu settings here for reflection. It's called Reflect. We have different axes, or axes. We have the horizontal and we have the vertical. And we want to flip this over the vertical axis. So this little dotted line indicates how we want to flip it. So we're going to select vertical. We are going to check preview. And you can see that it did exactly what we expected it to. It took the left side and it flipped it over to the right side. But we want to make a copy of that. So it's really easy to do it so that we have both sides taken care of. We just hit copy. And it's copied the left side to the right side. So now we have an exact mirror image. And what we can do now is select the whole thing. And then let me show you another tool that actually works really well. There is the smart, or it's not smart, but the Shapebuilder tool right over here. So we can see down below the reflect tool, in this case, Shapebuilder tool, it's a white arrow with a circle and some dots in it. So click on that, and when you do, you come back into your design. Your cursor now becomes a black arrow with a plus sign in it. If you hold down the Option key, it's a negative sign. But we want to join this side with this side to make one piece. And to do that, it's real simple. We leave it as is. I'm not holding down any keys. It's just the plus sign here, default in that black arrow. And I'm going to drag with my left mouse button into the right side, and you can see it highlight over there. And then there's this crude line. That's just the line that I drew with my mouse. And when I let go, it combines everything. It combines everything into one shape. So that is the Shapebuilder tool. We can also do that. Let me show you another way. We can also do that with the traditional Pathfinder panel. If we come up to Window and go down to Pathfinder, you can see it brings up this menu. It may appear over on the side here if it was docked over there. We are using the Essentials Classic workspace, so it likely won't be. But if you go to Window and down to Pathfinder, you'll see this. And if we just check this first box under Shape Modes, Unite, it does the same thing. Okay, so we'll close that. So some people like the Shapebuilder tool, some people like Pathfinder. I like the Shapebuilder tool a lot. There are good cases for using the Pathfinder too, though. All right, we're going to come back up in here, and I'm going to show you right here how we can drag out an anchor. We want this to not be so pointy in here. If you look really closely, it kind of is like a roof. We want to take our pen tool, and just like we did before when we wanted to drag out a new handle, a new set of handles, we hold down our Option key, and we put down our mouse, we select it, hold down the Shift key, and we drag out our curve. And you can see it's becoming more curvy. So more angular, more curvy. And when we like it, we can let go. Okay. Now you could, of course, just move a point if you want to. I'm going to move this to the left 3, 4 times. I'm going to have to do the same thing over here on the right. 1, 2, 3, 4. Even though our underlying drawing isn't exact, that's okay. But there we have it, the Batman. All right, I'm going to end with the Superman. I'm not going to do the oval. No, let's do the oval real quick. I can get this done pretty quickly. So the Ellipse tool, we're going to try to center this up. We can find where it says intersect here. It's center, actually, of the Batman symbol. We can, because we have our smart guides turned on, when we hover over there, we can see it says center. Let's hold down Option and Shift and drag out a circle. Option and Shift. Okay. So let's come down here and let's move our, that looks like an oval, doesn't it? Yeah. Let's center, Option Shift, and we will let go. Okay. Here's a cool trick. Let's turn off our smart guides. Command U, that toggles them off. So we could just drag it out like this and try to position things just, you know, going this like that. And that would work. But we want it to be the same on both sides, exactly the same. So let's undo those things. Undo scale. Command Z, Command Z. If we hold down Option and the Shift key, we will scale the circle up and down. We don't want that. But if we hold down just the Option key and drag just one side, we can see it affects the other side the same way, symmetrically. Okay, I'm going to set this back to a 2-point stroke. When we scaled it, it actually changed the size of the stroke. It scaled the stroke with it. So we have everything reset to 2 points here. I just dragged it. You can set it right up here at the top. You can also go to your stroke panel and do the same thing. So that's how you can create an oval pretty quickly. That's why I said we could do that pretty fast. Superman, let's get this one going. I will talk you through it very quickly. We'll go fast with this one. Click, start the point. We're going to go clockwise here. We're going to click and start the next point. We're just going to click and start that. And there. We're going to hold down the Option key and hover over top of this segment, and it will shift to this type of cursor with the 2 dots and the curved line, and we'll pull it down. Okay, let's come up to here. This one's going to be a little bit more tricky. But I'm going to use some of the techniques there that we've learned so far. So there we got a nice straight segment. We want to click, let's click right about here and then drag, and you can see what's happening. We're creating the curve. Let's put it right about here and drag, and you can see. So I am clicking and dragging. Here I'm going to click, pull out the handle, and then I'm going to shift direction. So I'm going to hit Option and just kind of go like this. This is what we did early on, kind of with those shark fin looking things. And then we're going to set our handle over here, come back with the Command key, and drag it into position. That looks pretty good. It's a little weird over here. I think that's just part of the original drawing. Click, click. These are straight. This is pretty easy. Straight. Let's just close it up here and then Option over top. Bend it into position there. So that Option key. Again, that will shift it to this curvature type tool. Just it gives you access to it. I'm not even sure what that tool is called, but I just know it helps a lot. Let's click here and we're going to drag. And we'll get as much as we can in place. That looks pretty good. And then we're going to come over here. I'm going to set a point, kind of like what we did with the roller coaster, only now we're on the left side. I'm going to hold down my Shift key to keep it kind of vertical there. That looks pretty good. Let's do it right up here at the top. So we're just trying to create our handles, keep them kind of short in between segments. I'm going to move this over. I could have done, while I was drawing, I could have held down the space bar, but that looks pretty good. We can continue on now. Let's click and we'll just drag, and we're just paying attention to the trailing curve there. Now I will hold down Option, and I don't have to come all the way over here. I can just hold down my Shift key, just keep it right about there, and then set my next point, set my next point. These are all nice straightaways. So there we go. Got the inner part of this symbol. And then, of course, we can do this. We could, of course, use the reflection tool and all that, but I think this is pretty straightforward. I don't think anyone's going to be measuring this. So there we go. So this one was unfinished up here. That's fine. Now, I did tell you that I was going to show you how to create a circle. Obviously, the best way to create a circle is just to use the circle tool. Or the ellipse tool over here. They should just call it the circle tool. I use it more for circles. Everything should be done just the way that I want here in Illustrator. Maybe I can rename that somehow. Anyway, let's delete this. Using some of the things that we learned already, let's go ahead and see what we can do. I'm going to show you 2 ways to create a circle. Let's actually get the rectangle tool first. Let's position it roughly in the center. I'm just going to guess. I probably won't be as precise this time. Let's click and hold down our Shift key and our Option key, and that's going to drag out a square. Yeah, I didn't get it that well, but that's okay. And then I'm going to hold down my Command key, and that's going to allow me to get the selection tool very quickly. And then I want to show you these little donut things up in the corner. You can see it looks like a little puppet eye, like a frog eye, Kermit the Frog or something, just like a little eye, a donut. Well, if we have all of our sides selected, or all of our points selected for our corners rather, and we see they're all selected because they're dark blue, we can come and hover over top, and you see our icon changes. So it's kind of going to change to this. And if we drag and we hold down our Shift key if you want to, you don't have to. You drag to the center until you see it red here. That means that it's closed. The points have met up. There's a circle from a square. So that's pretty interesting. Let's close out our video today by one more technique. I did tell you you could draw a circle. It's not going to be precise, but let's go ahead and click where we think the outermost part of this is, the apex or the outermost curve. That would be if we were to draw a box around it. Let's go back to that square. If we were to draw a line down from each thing, where would that point reside in the middle of that? So that's what we're aiming for. Let's just delete that. So we're going to put a point here. We're going to put a point right about here. We're going to put a point over here. Now we could use Smart Guides, Command U. I just turned them on, and we can see this little line pop up again. That's going to help us a little bit. It's not always exact, and it can get kind of crazy, but let's just set it right there. And then here's another one. We can try to line this one up, and then we'll close it. Okay, so we got that drawn. Command U, let's turn that off. Now, putting all this together using some of the techniques, let's go ahead and we only really have to do 2 of these points. So let's hold down our Option key. That's going to give us the anchor point tool. And then we're going to start dragging out a handle and holding down the Shift key now. So we're holding down the Shift key. I'm just going to do it like that. All right, and we're going to come down to the bottom and do the same thing. Okay, so there we have a circular shape. It doesn't look that great because we did these 2, and it's not a perfect circle anyway. We know that. We would use that ellipse tool, but let's go back. Command Z, Command Z. Let's drag out, and we're not going to be too careful with it. We're just going to do Option key to get that anchor point tool. We're just going to drag out some short handles here. Remember, you don't have to be precise. You can always go fine tune it. All right, now we can come in with our Command key, and we can just start holding down the Shift key, and we can start pulling things in or out to affect that curve. Again, transparency, multiply, that will give us a little bit more of a nice guide to work with. You can see. We can just play around here. This is a good thing if it's a rainy day and you really want to test your skills. You could do that. A little hint is that if you're working on a circle or something like that, your handles should be relatively symmetrical all the way around from the points. So like this is a really long handle compared to the one down here. So we know that we don't need to be that long. In fact, if we bring it down a little bit and try to make these more symmetrical, that's going to give us a more refined circle. So you can look at it like that. We can turn on, let's turn off that transparency again. Select the line. Transparency only affects the line in this case, the particular one that you've set. And that looks pretty good. I mean, most people would look at it from a distance and just say, oh, that's a circle. We know it's not perfect, but that's okay. But that's how you could do it. You could just set up the 4 points and then the 4 sets of handles and do it that way. Okay, we'll leave this one unfinished. That's okay. And then the Wonder Woman logo, that's kind of on your own time. Maybe just think about how it could be constructed. What are the techniques that we covered in this video? Well, I hope you enjoyed watching this. Go back, take a look, try these things out yourself. All right, well, have a good rest of the day. Thanks for joining me with this.